curled this ball in from the right side of the box and into the goal. The goalkeeper, in future years, he was prosecuted for taking bribes. Well, I think he took a bloody bribe. I think he took a bribe that night when I should, because I could have saved that shot that I did, But anyway.
They all count.
The official Manchester City podcast.
Welcome to the latest episode of the official Manchester City podcast, hosted by me, Rob Pollard, and former City defender Nedum Onuoha. Today we are joined by two guests. One is Paul Power, a man who played a remarkable 445 times for City between 1975 and 1986, which puts him ninth on City's list of all-time appearance makers. And the other is Paul's son, Nick. For those who don't know, Nick is an integral member of our academy setup, fulfilling the role of head of phase operations. Nedum, this is an exciting one for both of us, but for you in particular, I would have thought.
Yeah, 100%. I think every podcast has been exciting, but for me personally, seeing one of my old academy coaches be here and be able to tell his story, I think it is amazing because I have so many good memories of playing football with him, and the player that I was wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for people like him having the influence that they did when I was such a young player. So it's going to be another cracker.
And I think it's a really lovely story, actually, that Paul Power, somebody who, gave so much time, invested so much of his time into our academy setup, he's kind of passed that baton on, and now his son Nick is so heavily involved. And I think the academy's changed a lot during Nick's time here, so I'll be interested to get his take on that as well.
Oh, for sure. And you can just imagine how different things are, even though the roles that the two of them have had at the football club aren't drastically different. I think some of that will probably show, say what football was like back then, what football is like now. But it's interesting as well because, one, it does represent the past, but with Nick, this is the future. This is the future of the football club, the next big star for Man City, for just world football. He's helping those people come to the forefront. So, again, it's going to be a fantastic conversation with so many different sort of dimensions to it.
Should we get on with it then?
Absolutely.
Okay, here it is, the official Manchester City podcast, in conversation with Nick and Paul Power. Paul, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about your childhood. I believe you were born and raised in Openshaw. What was childhood like for you?
I was actually born in Openshaw on Barmouth Street at my grandma's house, but my parents moved to Wythenshawe while I was a baby. I was sort of a month old, and they moved to Wythenshawe in a council house there. So I was brought up in Wythenshawe, which is totally the opposite to Openshaw. Openshaw's a big blue area, even though the Etihad Stadium wasn't there then. They both used to go to St Bridget's School, which is now a car parking facility on a match day. So the City connection has always been there, or in this area, it's a big blue area. Went to Wythenshawe, of course, it was totally the opposite. South Manchester is a big red area, and I think that we used to play in the playground, City fans against United fans, and it was about 5 of us against 20 of them, and if you didn't get the ball and keep it for a while, you didn't see it for another 2 hours. So that was partly my upbringing. But both my parents were big blues. My dad, he'd go to Wembley to watch the game. Never took me with him. We weren't the wealthiest, to be fair. But the very first game he took me to was a City United derby match, a night match, and a police horse trod on my foot. So, I would have been about 10 then, but I actually joined City when I was about 13. A fella called Harry Godwin saw me play football and sort of invited me to come down and train at Cheadle with the academy, as it was then, or Centre of Excellence.
So what was that, the United game that you went to, the first game, was that at Main Road, presumably, or
yeah, it was.
Old Trafford, yeah?
It was.
What was your thoughts as a 10-year-old going into Main Road? Because it was an amazing place, wasn't it? And when you're young, and it's like an overload of the senses, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially on a derby match night, there are so many people about, and my dad was we were queuing to go up in the scoreboard end, and my dad was like keeping close rein on me, and then this police horse backed in because the crowd were pushing towards the turnstile, so this police horse backed into the line of supporters and trod on my foot. My dad went mad with him. He could have ended up in prison that night, and it'd been my first game missed, but anyway, things went okay, and it was daunting to say the least. But then, I used to go and stand in the Kippax. My parents took a pub in Openshaw called the Gransmore, and I used to go with one of the customers. He had a motorbike, and I used to go pillion, and we used to go to the game together in the Kippax Street, and that was fantastic. Some great European nights then. So didn't do much homework that night, I'm sure.
So you said before you were 13 when City first, you kind of signed for City, if you like. How did that come about? Where did you get spotted? And was there a time before that where you thought to yourself, I'm pretty good at this, I could have a career in the game?
I always knew I wasn't bad. I was a little left winger. My favourite player at City at the time was Neil Young. Everybody loved Colin Bell, and it was the Bell, Lee, Summerby era, but to me it was the Bell, Lee, Summerby, Young era, and he scored a great goal in the FA Cup final in 1969 against Leicester. So I was always hoping that I might meet some of these players one of the days, But I always knew I was not bad, but I wasn't special. I was quite small for my age until I reached the age of about 17. So it was difficult for me to get in. When I eventually did get into Manchester Boys, it was in the under 18s team. So I was studying A levels then, and we travelled to Hampden Park to play against Scotland boys, and then I was playing against Airdrie boys in Manchester, and Harry Godwin was there, remembered me from being 15 and being a little bit scrawny. I'd shot up by then, got a little bit more physical presence, and he invited me back down again. So, but Big Mel took me out on the pitch and just had me running up and down with a ball. He noticed that I was all left foot, obviously. He said, do you ever use your right? Never have all my career. So and that was quite an experience for me as a 13-year-old. Fantastic.
Yeah, I've got to say, I'm guessing that the horse trod on your right foot because your left foot was still in working order. But then as well as that, say when you were younger, you say you weren't special, but which players were special at that time in your eyes, or was it a case of you were just looking at yourself in a way which was almost like self-deprecating?
Yeah, I suppose that the latter. I used to cycle to school, so I used to cycle from Woodhouse Park to Sharston to school. Then at the end of school, I would do my homework, and then I'd cycle from Sharston to Cheadle to train. So you can imagine at the end of the night and then I cycled from Cheadle all the way back to Wythenshawe. So I was absolutely shattered at the end of the night. And then my dad had a pub, so I used to come home on Friday afternoon from university, Polytechnic. I apologise. And then I used to work on the bar at my dad's pub on a Friday night, play on a Saturday, go home, work on the bar on the Saturday night, Sunday lunchtime. Monday morning I would train, and we always used to train at Wythenshawe Park. It was a physical morning, which was great for me because I was a bit of a lazy student, to be fair. But I never signed a form for City, apart from a sort of an amateur form. And there was a director in charge of youth at Manchester City called Chris Muir, who felt that the club had made a mistake with Steve Highway when he was in the same predicament as me. He was studying at university, played for City. They didn't give him any money, sort of thing. So he went off and played non-league football for to sort of help towards his expenses for the week. So City lost out on him because while he was playing for, I can't remember which team it was now, but while he was playing for them, Liverpool spotted him and they invited him, and he signed for Liverpool instead of City, So I think they didn't want to make the same mistake again. So as soon as I qualified, and I promised my mum that I would always, shouldn't have mentioned, but I promised her that I would always finish my education. She worked at Wythenshawe Hospital and wanted me to be a doctor, but I was crap at sciences, so that was never going to happen. But I wasn't bad at languages and arts, and so I decided to study law. Got my law degree, and then Tony Butt was manager at City at the time, and he invited me down to sign forms, So once I'd become established in the first team, that was always going to be a career for me.
I mean, you say established, you're 9th on the list of all-time leading appearance makers for Manchester City, which is an incredible achievement in itself. I mean, Nick, for you growing up as a City fan, how proud must you have been to have a father who had achieved what he'd achieved? I mean, we're going to come to the centenary FA Cup final and all that kind of stuff later, but that must have been pretty cool for you when you were growing up.
Yeah, I guess it was. You get us all bubbling here. We'll all be going. No, I don't think I ever was really that aware of it, if I'm being really honest, because you're really humble, aren't you? Growing up was just normal to us. I was unaware. I know football was different back then, but I was unaware of what you were doing, what you had achieved until... I remember the lads from Edgerton were around at a party, must have been like 11, 12, and they compared you to Dennis Irwin at the time, just trying to say like, you were an established sort of Premier League footballer. And it was that moment where I just thought, oh yeah, that's my daddy, that's what he did. And I know football was different back then, but yeah, I didn't really grow up thinking, stardom,
Yeah, I didn't really get you involved sort of on match days and stuff, did I? Apart from watching the games, but you were a little bit older when I signed for Everton, and having a little bit more success at Everton regarding winning the league, and you were involved in all those games towards the end of the season.
I'll never forget at Goodison walking across the pitch back to the car park and running, trying to jump and touch the crossbar, and I couldn't get near it, but I was mascot at your testimonial as well.
That's right.
I'm vague recollections of that. But yeah, there was nothing. I mean, going to Main Road with you on a Saturday was one of my fondest memories, because we used to park at the Kippax, walk behind the north stand to get round to the main entrance. Before that, if you remember, I had to jump out and get the tickets from a guy called Peter in a little window.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how I remember this stuff. And he knew who I was, and he just had the tickets there waiting. And then we parked, and it took us ages to get round because he stopped signing autographs all the time. And I was like, I just wanted to get in. And I was lucky because I used to ball boy at the time, because I was playing here. That was what those age groups did at the time. And you were working on the radio. And I just wanted to get in, and he was just signing autographs. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
I think for me as a young City fan, when I was growing up, the goal against Ipswich was the one that, first introduced me to Paul Power and the whole sort of mystique around you and your career.
Yeah, that's good. That was about my 300th game. So I had to wait quite a long time.
I missed your era, but I mean, watching videos and things like that, it was that goal that I remember thinking, wow, that was a hell of a strike. I mean, that is an iconic City goal, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable, the FA Cup that year, because I scored in every round except against Peterborough. I scored against Norwich when we beat them about 6 at Main Road. And then I scored against Everton when they were beating us 2-1, and I scored the equaliser to get us a replay at Main Road. I scored in the replay, and then that took us to the semi-final against Ipswich. And Eric Gates was, we got to the end of the game, it was 0-0. And Eric Gates came up, he had his boots under his arm, and I said, I think you'll find there's extra time. He went, no, it's a replay, isn't it? I said, no, it's extra time. He said, oh, you can have it then. So I thought, well, I hope all your mates think the same, And then we got free kick, sort of outside the sort of right-hand side of the box. And the way we'd sort of practiced, if you like, Steve McKenzie would knock it to me. And then when the player came off the end of the wall to close the ball down, I'd knock it again for Tommy Caton to come and strike it, because he had a fantastic left foot, Anyway, nobody came off the wall. So Steve McKenzie knocked the ball. Nobody came to close the ball down. So I thought, I used to play with Brian Kidd, and Kiddo used to always say, if you don't buy a raffle ticket, you don't win a prize. That was his saying. So if you don't have a shot, you don't score a goal, So I thought, I'm going for the raffle ticket here, and I bent the ball in. Paul Cooper was a smallish goalkeeper, but very agile, but he went up in the top corner, he couldn't reach it. So and all the City fans were behind that Holt end. And I just remember them just all going up as the ball was going into the net. You know, it was a fantastic feeling. And all the way home down the motorway, cars were going past the team coach, bibbing the horns, waving the flags out. You know, we weren't expected to beat Ipswich at all. In fact, my wife's brother, Billy, was a big red. Followed them all over Europe, like, you know. And he said, if you beat Ipswich on Saturday, I'll go to Wembley and I'll wear all blue, like, you know. And I said, okay. So, but that's how much people least expected us to win the game. And of course, then we got to Wembley, and I knew where the family tickets were. So I looked up, and there was Billy with a big blue and white flag, waving it. He had a blue jumper on with a City crest on it. Blue shirt, blue trousers, like, and then he put his right foot up on, and he had red socks on, like, you know. he said I couldn't do it. But now we had, you know, they were a big red family, and but we had loads of banter, you know. It was good fun then, you know. But it wasn't always good for me at City. You know, the year we got relegated, I got unmerciful stick off the supporters. You know, I mean, they were expecting better from the captain of the team. You know, they always do. And if the team falls below their expected standards, tends to be the captain that might get the feedback. So, you know, I had some real tough times at. In fact, we played United at Old Trafford, and I'd not been married long, so Julie was sitting. And do you remember Big Helen with the bell?
Helen the Bell, yes, yeah.
Who was a Joe Corrigan fan, you know, unbelievably. And the game was at Old Trafford, and Big Helen was sitting 2 rows in front of Julie and her dad. They were watching the game together. I'd got them tickets, so it was in the City end, and I made a mistake, and you know, a bit unusual, but I did. And Big Helen shouted, "Power, you've been effing useless since you got married." and Julie's sitting right behind him, like, you know. So she stood up, my missus, supporting me, saying, "Why don't you shut up?" And like, so it was nearly all going off in the stand.
Bit of blue on blue action.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
love it.
But that was you know, me getting some stick off the fans. It wasn't all roses, I must say.
I've got to say then, so do you think it's harder or easier to represent the team that you support?
Easier.
Why?
Easier, because I never ever wanted to leave the club and play for anybody else. You know, let me ask you this question then.
Go on.
How did you feel on the day of the Aguero goal? How did you feel? As brought up in Manchester as a City player.
In coming back, like, my career was ahead of me, and I needed to stay up that day. That was the first priority.
Yeah.
I think the fact that City won the league was great, because I got to see some of my friends who'd been going at it for so long. You know, people who'd signed when the team was struggling, and now here they were about to lift the Premier League trophy. And I know that journey that they were on because I was there with them.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. But in the moment itself, because it's football, when you're on the field, you just try to win for your team. And I didn't want to ever play against City. It was never a goal. There were times when I was playing well for City and it was interest. I'm like, it was irrelevant, because there was only one place I wanted to be. So it was a bit different. But then what I'd say is, when I first started, if we lost on a Saturday, like, I wouldn't even leave my house for the week, because I was so caught up thinking, like, I can't do it. Like, we were so embarrassing, you know, and this is my team. I'm getting so frustrated. But I think the difference comes further down the road when you realise, like, it's a career, it's a long period of time, and everyone's doing the best that they can.
Of course.
You know what I mean? So that's why.
You see, you were always a little bit. You were physical, and quick as lightning, but a little bit delicate
at times,
mentally. If you don't mind me saying, I mean,
especially when I was younger.
I don't mean you were mentally weak. But you just.
I was emotional.
You needed encouragement. You
Yeah.
know, and then you needed to get the best out of you as a player. You went to Bermuda, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And Sean Gold just destroyed me, yeah. I remember that clear as day.
Hang on a minute. See, that is you being, as I've just explained. Sean Goater came to me at the end of the game and said, I couldn't get a bloody kick against him. He was quicker than me, you know?
No, trust me, it was tough.
See, you talked about the self-deprecating thing.
Yeah.
We've discussed that with other guests.
Yeah, but the thing is, I changed as I got older because you start to be really aware of how football works and you know your place within it. And you start to realise, because like I think sometimes I mention when I was first coming through, I used to be looking at like player ratings and stuff like that. And it's like, it's the most ridiculous thing going. But then as you get older, the most important person to give you feedback is your manager, who selects you every week. It's your teammates who play with you every week.
So if you could go back, you'd block out the noise more as a youngster.
I'd encourage youngsters to block out the noise more, but in the moment, that's all you know.
One thing we see at the academy all the time is we've got such talented kids right the way through. And when it gets to like that 15, 16 age group, the mental element, the mentality is what's going to get them into that next stage through their scholarship and into hopefully the first team changing room.
There aren't many physical aspects of being a footballer. So you've got to be quick.
Yeah.
You've got to be agile.
Yeah.
You've got to have good spring.
I've got none of those.
This is true. They can confirm that.
Which is why you're sitting
That's why
behind
I'm
that
saying
microphone.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You're very good at that.
Thank you very much.
That's all right. But, mental responsibilities of a player, there are like hundreds, if you get knocked down, how's your bounce back ability? If you like, can you, or do you stay down there, or can you get yourself back up again? There are lots of awareness. Do you see problems before they happen, or that's the same as a coach.
Like sometimes we'll say someone's a good player, but what we're trying to say is that they're talented. But the good players are the ones who tend to stick around for a long time with the talent that they have and continue to are reliable for their team. You know what I mean? So sometimes like it can just be easy for someone to be called a good player. But like I played with Adel Taarabt, technically amazing, as good as anyone ever played with.
I love watching him play.
But at the time, he didn't, because when I left City in 2012, so I saw the team that was going to go on and win a league, and I saw the talent and the professionalism that existed. And then I saw Adel, who had the talent but didn't have the professionalism.
Yeah.
So do I say he's a good player, or do I say he's talented? Because people are trying to say, oh, he's a really good player, he's a good player.
There's
but
more
he
to
wasn't.
being a good player than just technical ability.
Exactly.
And also a great influence on a young player, whether he's successful, whether he's grounded or gets a little bit above himself, is parents, and how the parent. Now, your mum was unbelievable.
Yeah, she was good, yeah.
I'm bubbling again here, because his mum was a fantastic woman, and whenever we had dealings about him with her, she would consider both sides of the argument. It wasn't no, my son's the best thing since sliced bread, I want this for him, this. It was always, well, what do you think he should, what do you think he should do? And she sought out sort of advice for her son.
Yeah.
Whereas there are other parents that come who think their son is the bee's knees,
And they think they know
and they
best.
fill his head full of popcorn.
Yeah.
And and he doesn't become that because he's not had the discipline at home. When Phil Foden was how old were we?
Been going into
he was
9,
eight.
wouldn't he? Yeah.
He was 8, 9, and everybody wanted to sign Phil Foden because he was the best. He was like the Maradona of Northwest football. Like when I played in 1976 in the semi-final of the League Cup against Middlesbrough, we had 10 players from Manchester. So there was Joe Corrigan, Alan Oakes, Glyn Pardo, Gary Owen, Peter Barnes, myself, Kenny Clements. There were 10 Manchester players. I think if I'm right, that there was only Asa Halford or Dennis Stewart that weren't from Manchester. So that was, the local recruitment was well, I wouldn't say much better, but there wasn't as much choice further away. Now, you're looking abroad, like Vladimir Weiss and people, and that come from abroad now. But then there were 10 players that played for Manchester City in the semi-final of the League Cup. I don't think that'll ever happen again, ever.
Nick, do you think it's getting to the point City's academy is so good that if you get to sort of scholar level and you sign that professional contract, you're pretty much guaranteed maybe to have a career somewhere across the pyramid or in Scotland or across Europe somewhere?
Yeah.
Because the way we coach our players is to such a high level that they can go and play pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to guarantee it because there's a lot that could happen with injury and a bit of luck along the way, no matter what happens. But
Tommy Doyle.
But if you get a
Tommy
scholarship
Doyle
at
and
City,
McAtee.
you're in with a very, very good chance of having a good career. But some of our players, because of the way they're coached and taught now, you can see them playing in La Liga or abroad and having real strong careers because they're technically so good.
Yeah. So I asked you about being proud of Paul. I'm going to ask you the same question, because obviously you've worked heavily in City's academy, and now your son has kind of taken that baton and is a big part of what we do here.
Yeah.
How proud are you of kind of what he's gone on to do?
To make me cry.
Sorry.
Listen, you don't have to say you're proud.
Pulling
You
the
can say it's all
heartstrings.
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nicky was involved with recruitment. Your first job at the club was with Barry Poynton's
Scouting and
going
recruitment,
coaching in the schools, and you know what I mean. So his development through to the position that he's achieved now is fabulous. And I've just before I got off the tram here, I had a message from Ian Mellor, who used to play for City as well. Spider. I worked with Spider at the PFA, and he came to a presentation evening last night, and he said, "Your son was ultra professional, fantastic, led the proceedings really well," and that pleases me as much as anything. I'd have loved to see him play for Manchester City. Spider, Neil Mellor had a great career, and you two played together, didn't you? So, you know, that would have been great to see him play for Manchester City as well. But to see his involvement in the development of young players is fantastic.
Well, I can say Nick is one of the most respected people at City. Again, don't want to make you cry, but I can pretty much vouch for that.
Yeah, good.
No,
good.
it didn't work out for me footballing wise for whatever reason. The club was in a different time. I don't think I had it mentally I was always not a bad little footballer, quick little right winger, but I didn't have enough. Maybe I didn't have enough desire, I didn't want it, but I've still been able to work at the club that I love, and that's what drives me day to day. That's why I like presenting these awards, because it's for the kids, it's for the families. Everyone's going to leave City at some point. It might be next year, it might be in 20 years like Phil, but they're going to leave at some point, so they have to have an amazing City experience, is what we call it, while they're with us. And that's what I wanted to bring to stuff like that. When we spoke, Nedum, recently at the leadership conference, like that's the stuff that I've been here 17 years now. I feel like I know it like the back of my hand, so I don't find it difficult.
Part of the furniture, Nick.
I mean, my role as a parent then, when Nicky played, I used to go and watch every game he played on a Sunday.
I don't know about that.
Well, not away.
We'll say we'll
Not
pretend.
away. Yeah.
Pretend. Yeah.
And he was away on tour with Rod Owen. We
went to northern France, didn't we? To
Rod
Lille.
Owen was your coach. While he was away, I've got a letter from Terry Farrell, who was like chief recruitment officer then, and it said, "We're sorry to say that we don't think your son is going to," which I thought was, and I would never ever do that and write a letter to parents saying that we've released your son. I would do it face to face and explain exactly. And if they have any comeback questions, they've
got an opportunity to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've had this letter releasing him from the club as a 14. Were you 14, 15? And of course he comes back from this tournament where they'd done well, full of himself. Like, "Oh, Rod always said I played great," and I know I've got to break the news to him with this. You know what I mean? It's a really difficult job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was gutted because everyone holds. I mean, you guys did it. You might associate a bit better with this, Rob. You all hold dreams of playing for City, especially with our family connections. And I thought, I was there, but it is what it is. And now I'm still here, 40 years old, working at the club, and love every day.
You don't look 40.
I was literally just going to say the same thing. You don't look 40 at all. How much has the academy changed during your time? Because it's.
I was going to say something there, but I'm going to resist. I'm going to resist. I know it. Let's please carry on.
Yeah.
Let's cut that bit out. Yeah.
So, because the academy is getting certainly from my perspective, even the last 3 years. I'll look at what's happened in the last 3 years. We've just won Premier League 2 for the third year on the bounce. And we've won the under-18s national title 3 years on the bounce. I mean, what's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, so 17 years ago, it was Jim Cassell was the academy director.
He sits just in front of me at the games, actually.
Did you win the youth cup?
No, so to touch you on that, Paul. So my age group was supposed to, because we were one of the best age groups, but we played United at Old Trafford. I think we lost 2-0, and Casper, he barely made any mistakes, but on that day, made 2 mistakes and we lost the 2-0.
Oh, right, okay.
So yeah, it's a touchy one that I'm still not over it.
I mean, tell me who went on from your team to have a career in football.
Well, Casper's not doing too bad, is he?
Casper's had a great career.
Yeah, he kicked on from there.
That's a good example maybe for the kids, because sometimes the bad results for academy coach, you know in your mind this is actually going to be better for them than the 10 games on the bounce that they've just won.
Well, we had it with the Youth Cup this year. The lads, we had the lads sent off after 5 minutes. We had to play the whole game.
Played brilliantly.
Took them at the Emirates Stadium in front of thousands of people. Took them to extra time. Absolute killer last minute of extra time that we lost. And in that moment, you can't say to the lads, actually, this could be quite good for you. But in time, that they might see that and that'll help with them. Anyway, we then went on and won the national final the other day. And I think they took so much from that defeat into that when it went to extra time that they couldn't let that happen again.
And they beat the team who won the FA Youth Cup.
Yeah.
Beating the team who's
West
not them
Ham.
out 5-1.
Is that West Ham? Okay.
Yeah. So great result.
But they were the two best academies, North and South, this season. So that should have been the Youth Cup final, really. But yeah, going back, Jim Cassell was the academy director at the time. I think when he employed the 5 of us, me, Cush, Johnny, Lewis and Billy, I think it took the full-time staff from 20 to 25, which is incredible given the staffing that we have at the academy now must be 90 to 100.
We used to have a Christmas party for the academy, the whole academy staff, in one room at a restaurant, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now there's over 100 academy staff.
We do the full club party now, and it's immense. If you get into the city
nice
football
to get
group,
an invite sometime.
no chance. No, your day's done.
I've got to go back to, from your playing days to the Centenary FA Cup final. So to be a Manchester City fan as a kid and to lead a team out in, the Centenary final, that is an amazing story. I mean, could you ever have imagined that, or is that just the kind of thing that you just end up doing and pinching yourself thinking, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah. I've got loads of photographs around the sort of corridors at home of that particular semi-final, final, meeting the Queen Mother. I'd never since met another member of the royal family, but apologies, I did. Did you play in that tournament in Doha when we were introduced to Prince Edward?
No, I wasn't there.
Oh, were you not there?
No,
okay.
no.
So, yeah, I met Prince Edward as well.
Humble bracket. It wasn't just one, it was another one. There was another member of royalty, Sorry, guys,
Obviously, Tottenham end up winning the replay. Huge disappointment, but still must be a proud achievement, that.
See, that was another occasion when we knew that Glenn Hoddle was always a threat of set pieces round the edge of the box. So we rehearsed that particular situation, and Joe would cover one side of the goal. Joe Corrigan, that is, would cover one side of the goal. We'd have 4 players in the wall, and then Tommy Hutchison was on the end of the wall. And Tommy said, even in training during the week, he said, as soon as he strikes it, if I because he'd curl it into the near post, so away from Joe, he said, if he hits the post and I break off the wall, and I'll be first to the rebound. So, but Joe said, no, don't do that, Tommy. He said, keep the wall still and safe. He said, if he bends it into that top corner, we've got 5 men in the wall, then good luck to him. Like, he deserves to score. So, of course, the day comes, and Glenn Hoddle bent it. Tommy came off the end of the wall to go and do what he thought was the best thing. It hit him on the side of the head, and Joe's gone this way, and the ball's gone in the other. So it was an own goal, But I mean, if you watch the reaction of Joe, and because Tommy was an experienced pro, Joe was never going to say, what do you think you're doing? It was always, we knew it was a mistake. Tommy knew it was a mistake, but it ended up costing us, because that was the equaliser. We'd have probably won the game 1-0, and that was the difference.
You were that close to lifting the FA Cup, weren't you?
I tell you, I used to see photographs of Tony Buck around the reception area at Main Road, lifted on the shoulders of Alan Oakes and Mike Doyle with the trophy, and I thought, I would have loved that to have happened to me, but unfortunately it didn't. So,
one of your greatest moments in a City shirt came in the San Siro. What do you recall about that goal? Talk us through it, because that must have been an amazing moment.
Yeah, it was. The lead up to the game was that we were supposed to play on the Wednesday. We went out onto the pitch, and there was a fog So you could see the first tier of the San Siro Stadium, but you couldn't see the top tier. All you could see were flares, fires, but the place was full. And when we went out to warm up and that, it was quite intimidating. So the stadium was a great atmosphere in there. We went into the dressing room, then this fog descended. So the referee came in and said, we're going to have to call the game off. We're going to play it tomorrow afternoon at 2:00, which favoured us. I'm not sure it favoured our supporters who'd probably have to get back home. But a lot of the AC Milan supporters would have been at work the following day at 2:30 in the afternoon. So the atmosphere wasn't quite as intimidating the next day. What I remember of the goal was the ball came to me sort of on the right side of our box, 18-yard box. I just ran with it, and typical of Italian defenders, they all just retreated back to almost to their 18-yard box. And of course, I cut across him onto my left foot, and then I curled this ball in from the right side of the box and into the goal. The goalkeeper, I think, was a fella called Albertozzi. I might be wrong. It was, but in future years, he was prosecuted for taking bribes. Well, I think he took a bloody bribe. I think he took a bribe that night because I could have saved that shot that I did, But anyway,
they all count.
I may be playing it down. But that was another one. If you don't buy a raffle ticket, you don't buy a prize. And I always think about Kiddo whenever I see some of those goals.
And what about your goal against City when you went to Everton? That must be weird.
Did you celebrate?
No, I didn't. And but I got a telling off by Howard Kendall at the end of the game. He said when you score for Everton, you celebrate. Even though I'd had a great season for him, he meant it, but because he was a big Evertonian, having played for them, managed them, and knowing what it meant to the supporters. But from my point of view, City was struggling that year against relegation. We were going for promotion. Obviously, I was delighted to score the goal because it won us 3 points and contributed towards us winning the league. And also, I had friends on the pitch that I'd played with the season before, Mick McCarthy and Neil McNabb, Kenny Clements, that I couldn't run around flailing my arms about. I'd have felt as if I was rubbing the noses in it, really. So I just sort of jogged back to the halfway line. And it was a good occasion for my teammates, but I didn't want to rub my old teammates' noses in it, really.
So you managed to score a goal and get told off by your manager.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That could be a first.
That was, yeah. I wanted to ask you as well about you mentioned it a little bit before, the Luton Town, the relegation situation. I've got a lot of my friends who are a little bit older than me who remember that, and they still hate Luton Town to this day. Was that the low point for your career?
The player that I played against there became manager of Manchester City in later years, Brian Horton.
Yeah,
of course,
yeah, you did.
But yeah, it was. You see, you talk about the mental aspects of playing any game. Pressure is a fantastic additive to a performance, like whether the performance is good or not. I mean, we'd played the game the week before on the south coast. I think it was either Brighton or Southampton, or I can't remember exactly, but we won that game, which meant that we only had to draw at home to avoid relegation against Luton, who weren't, like top of the league or anything. So we were sort of fancied a little bit, but the longer the game went on, it was 0-0, 0-0. The longer the game went on, there was always a pressure that something might happen, and they get a corner or a penalty, or as long as it was 0-0, there was always a fear that. Plus, I might add, the Friday before that game on the Saturday, I got a phone call from Kevin Bond, and he said, and I won't mention the player because it's a bit unfair, and I'm not sure it's common knowledge, but one of our players, he said, did his wife stay at your house last night? Because his wife was friendly with mine. And I said, no, she wasn't here last night. So he said, right, okay. And so this particular player, his wife was having an affair. He might as well not have been on the pitch against Luton that day, like, you know, so...
Because his head was somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And all those sort of issues, people don't see that. You know, the ordinary supporter doesn't see that. But that affected our performance as a team. Without making excuses, we got through to about the last 4 minutes. I think it was 4 or 5 minutes from the end when Luton scored. And it was a deflected goal. So, you know, everything went against us that day. You can feel the nervousness from the crowd. You know,
You'll know all about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm afraid, yeah.
Generates into the team.
You feel it as a player, don't you? Yeah,
you do.
You've said
you
this.
do.
Yeah, but you, like, to put it into today, like, the City fans will feel this in the last month of the season. Even though the team's been magnificent to this point, if it's the longer it stays 0-0, the more you can sense the anxiety in the stadium.
Yeah.
Even though you've got some of the best players in the world who are likely to go and win the game.
Yeah.
They're still just like really anxious and
nervous.
You can just feel that nervous energy because that one goal, as you said, changes everything. Doesn't it?
There's a different type of energy as well. There's a nervous energy which comes from fighting against something. So it's a negative reaction. So we were fighting against relegation. So then you get a nervousness that comes to avoid the negative result of the game.
Yeah.
When we played Charlton, sort of 2 years later, to get promotion, you know, we were flying really, and you know, we had games left. It wasn't it was to gain something positive. So the energy was positive then. And the approach to the game was totally different. And
so
then
one's
I think
fear, one's excitement, almost.
Yeah. And Jim Mel, we scored early on in the game. I think Andy May got a goal that day as well. So we were 2 or 3-0 up, and then you can settle down and you can relax and play your football. You know what I mean? It's a totally different type of pressure altogether.
So we've got some questions we ask every guest. So I want to just quickly run through those. If you can change one rule on football, what would it be? Nick, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Yeah, no, it's got to be this line's assistant referee not putting the flag up straight away. I get it. If it's tight, let it run on, but there's some that are really obvious, aren't they? Just put your flag up. Is that me being like a bit old school? Or...
No, I think it's quite annoying as a spectator. You have a different opinion on this?
You don't want to be angry people shouting at the clouds up in the sky, that's fine, you do that.
Yeah, I've brought this up before and Nedum does disagree. I think as a spectator I find it
it can be quite
annoying.
frustrating until you look back at replay and sometimes it's close, and then sometimes it's close to the point where somebody's on, and then it's like, well, okay, that could have been
no
a goal.
problem with it when it's tight.
Yeah.
There are some real obvious ones where they just...
Yeah, I know what you mean. But then I think the argument that some people would put out there is that somebody will get injured from if they keep on playing.
Carries on.
But through all the time when I've heard that argument, I've yet to see someone get injured whilst they've carried on playing.
That is true.
So it's something that exists in our mind, but it's not actually there.
As a defender then,
Yeah.
are you in favour of the line drawing offside thing with VAR? You know, because it can be...
You can be very close,
inch. It can be an inch.
Yeah, for me, so interestingly, when I was in the MLS, they didn't have the lines, but they did have the video assistant referee. So they'd look back at a freeze frame and make a decision based on how you see it.
Yeah.
And that always felt better to me, because there are times there are times when you look at something and think it's offside, and times where, like, you know, if as a defender, even if someone's kneecap appears to be offside, if I was to look at the video, it probably wouldn't look offside.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't leave the game and be complaining that somebody's offside.
Yeah.
Whereas there's some way it feels more offside, so as a consequence.
That John Stones one the other day against Arsenal, everyone thought he's offside there. And they drew the lines. We were like, oh,
exactly.
have that.
But I think if the striker's feet are behind the defender's feet, because you can be offside if your top body's offside.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I'm not sure about that, because your natural lean is towards the goal, isn't it? And,
I agree with that. Yeah.
So it should be your feet, you think?
I think
where
so.
it's measured. Yeah. That makes sense.
If your feet are behind the defender's feet, then you're onside. Like, you know what I mean? But I mean, my change of a rule might be, I think 5 substitutes or even more. You know,
it's too
many.
Okay.
And nobody ever uses 5 substitutes in a game, but the only reason they do is to kill time. And I think it takes away from the spectators. You know, they'll make loads of substitutions if they're winning 1-0 and
slow the game down a bit.
Yeah.
And they're meant to add on time for every sub, but I'm not sure they do it.
Come on, everyone grumbles about how little stoppage time there is at the end of a game.
Yeah.
Unless you happen to be winning, it's like it's too much. You know what I mean? That's the thing. It's a very emotional board going.
I fall into that trap.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
What was the last kind of book, series, podcast, music, whatever that you kind of binged or really got into and enjoyed?
Susan and we're not really into the sort of
I can't even
binging.
switch your television on, by the way.
I know, yeah, we need to work at that. But lockdown took us to Suits. We hit Suits, all 9 series of it, in about 3 months. We did it in, and then we got you onto it, didn't we?
No, we got
was it
you
the other
onto
way
it.
around?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There we go.
Oh, that's a bit awkward, isn't it? Then you can't turn the TV on, but it puts you onto something.
So what about you? What's the last thing that you kind of really...
We're right in the middle of a series called The Good Doctor.
Okay.
Which is, it's not a laugh a minute, I've got to say, but it's all about relationships. I get quite fascinated by relationships, and how they can put a twist on things. So The Good Doctor is definitely worth a watch.
And then we also ask you to leave a question for our next guest. But before we do that, Paul, I'm going to ask you the question that was left for you by Steph, our City Women's captain. She said, what attribute does every player need to be successful?
Oh, well, I think we've discussed this already, and my answer would be mental toughness. Mental toughness is, when the chips are down, but you're mentally strong, you'll override any problems that come your way. If you're not quite as strong, they'll trip you up. Also, playing at places like Anfield, where the crowd will be having a go at you, laughing. Almost, you could hear them laughing. So you like I used to play against Tommy Smith, and Tommy Smith would be making gestures behind my back as I'm running back, and you'd hear the supporters laughing, and you sort of turn around. They try to intimidate you, and if you're not mentally tough and you fold, then I would say definitely that for any professional sportsman, not just a footballer.
And then what question would you like to leave for our next guest?
We can get 2 questions here.
We can get two. So we can get 2.
Each,
so Nick, do you want to leave yours first?
Yeah, I was very lucky because things didn't work out for me football. I got a French degree, lived in France, so I got the opportunity to travel quite a bit. So I would like to know where the best place that they've visited in the world.
Thank you for a non-football question to leave behind, because we've wanted one of those. What about you, Paul? What would you ask our next guest?
I would. So it's again maybe not sports related. It might be, or it might not be. Is there any decision you've made during your career or during your life that you wish you'd have made differently at the end of your career?
Fantastic.
Or, something,
just some
whatever.
juncture in life where they wished maybe you'd taken a different decision.
And their lives might have taken a different role as a result.
Brilliant. Well, Nick Power, Paul Power, thank you so much for joining us on the official Manchester City podcast. We really appreciate it.
It's been a
Thanks
pleasure.
for having
I'll
us.
shake hands with my son.
Cheers, Pop.
Thank him for his support.
The official Manchester City podcast with Rob Pollard and Nedum Onuoha.
There we have it, Nick and Paul Power in conversation on the official Manchester City podcast. Nedum, what did you make of that?
No, it was great. I think there were so many times we were listening to stories. It's like Paul's vivid memory of things at such a long time ago is incredible. The level of emotion that he has as well when talking about the past. And then with Nick as well, seeing the importance of his father, but then explaining his role with this football club as well. And, through all that, the biggest thing for me, Nick Power's older than you, and you look older than him.
He is looking very well for his age, in fairness.
Or is it you that's looking...
But yeah, it could be the latter.
Both things could
actually.
be true, actually. Both things could be true. But yeah, I love that. Absolutely love that. How about you?
Definite emotion between the two of them, isn't it? You can tell that he's proud of his dad and he's proud of his son, which I thought was lovely. And there was some emotion in there as well, which I'm not sure I expected it to get like that. But again, it's nice to see, these things are important to people, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's the thing about this podcast. When people want to come and sit down, you want them to feel relaxed enough to be able to open up and show emotion, whether it's the highs, the lows, because that makes for the better story itself. I think sometimes within football, you get very closed up as soon as there's a microphone in your face. But I think that's one of the beauties that we have with this. I'm sure the listeners would agree that, when people sit down, they're very open, they're very honest, and as a consequence, you get a true depiction of who they are as opposed to the general one that comes from elsewhere.
Absolutely. I'm getting emotional now.
I'll relax you.
So there we go. That's it. The latest episode of the Man City podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever it is you do your podcast listening. And as always, I want to do a little plug for the official Manchester City app. Make sure you download that. That's the best place to get all the latest news, video and information regarding Manchester City. So thank you very much for joining us once again. Join us again next time. Until then, take care.
The official Manchester City podcast. Subscribe and follow now so you never miss an episode.